Ah,
Look, they're excited, okay? They're excited about it.
Until they hear the first joke.
just give
They
a
already heard the
signal
first
on the
joke.
chat or something. Like,
They already heard the
stop.
first joke.
Yeah.
They enjoyed my first joke.
No, we're not doing that right now.
I think we're live.
We are.
Okay.
Good
Hi,
drama.
everyone. Welcome to the Black Kids White Coats YouTube channel. For those of you that are new here, this is a new installment in our match series. Today, we have some melanin magic that have recently matched into ophthalmology. That took me a while to get it right. But yeah, ophthalmology. So for those of you that are new and don't know who any of us are, my name is Adama. I am finishing my intern year in Southern California. And then I'll have my two co-hosts introduce themselves, starting with Lillian.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I am Lillian, and I am a rising fourth year medical student.
What's up, everyone? My name is Nelson. I am a recent med school grad going into radiology.
Okay, and then today we have two special guests. We have Aaron and Belinda, who have just recently matched into ophthalmology, and they will be starting their intern year in July. So, can you two tell me exactly what is ophthalmology for people who don't know what that is?
I'll let you take
Yes,
that.
indeed. Yes, indeed. So ophthalmology is the wonderful field where we deal with eye disease, eye pathology, as well as eye surgery. Some of our most common procedures that we do, for example, are cataracts. We also deal with procedures within glaucoma, retina. We have pediatric ophthalmology. We have neuro-ophthalmology. And we also have what we call ocular and facial plastic and reconstructive surgery, where we get to do trauma, reconstruction, and cosmetic work involving the eye as well as the face. So within ophthalmology, we're not just so limited to doing one thing being cataracts. There's a slew of different things that we do within the field.
Okay,
Solid.
mic drop.
Yeah.
There it is. And y'all, let me just tell you, I have an ophthalmologist, A1. Um, but yeah, okay. And then can you two tell me basically your journey throughout medical school, what that encompassed?
I'm sure. So, I guess you mean like starting from like undergrad into med school?
Yeah,
Or just like med
sure.
school? Okay, so I guess like just going into like undergrad, I kind of knew I wanted to do medicine. I think like growing up, medicine is something that always interested me. Granted, I wanted to do a whole bunch of things, but like medicine is like the one thing that stuck. And I was always intrigued with like the way the body works and how it functions and like the interplay with different things. And I also liked like working with my hands too. So I'm just like, medicine, this looks like it's going to be it for me. So, going through undergrad, I was kind of like your typical science major. So I did molecular and cellular biology. I did like a dual like BS MS program. And then the year before and then the year before I applied, I like worked as a scribe because I wanted to get some money before like med school. And then so med school, it was I want to say like, and going to med school, just like know the reasons why you want to go to a specific place, right? So like for me, the reason that I chose, so I go to Penn State. One of the reasons why they have a pretty strong global health program, and I was really interested in global health. I'm going into it, and so like went through med school, like did the curriculum, kind of like discovered ophthalmology, kind of like serendipitously. Honestly, didn't really know. Like I knew ophthalmology, the eye, that's it, right? So I kind of like one of my facilitators, who it was completely unrelated course, just like if anybody's interested in shadowing me, feel free to reach out. Shadowed him one time in clinic, and that kind of like lasted with me for a bit, and I was like, oh, this is really interesting. Went through my third year clerkships, and I know we'll probably like get more into like that story and stuff like that, but like nothing really stuck with me until I had the opportunity to do another elective my fourth year in ophtho, and I was like, man, this is it. So it's kind of like a sprint for me, because it was like me deciding like my fourth year that I wanted to get into it, but that's kind of like how my med school journey into like ophthalmology and stuff like that.
Yes, indeed. So I kind of will agree with a lot of stuff that Belinda has said. Many people going into ophthalmology, we kind of don't discover it until on the later end within medical school. But for me personally, I attended the University of Texas at Dallas, where I studied neuroscience and classical piano. During my third year of college, I had the opportunity to do as well as to teach rodent stereotactic neurosurgery. And from that opportunity, I knew for a fact that I wanted to be a surgeon. I just wasn't too sure if I wanted to do neurosurgery or or something else. Coming into med school, I was kind of that med student that just loved everything. I enjoyed bits and pieces of each individual specialty. But what I enjoyed the most when I got to ophthalmology was that it was a combination of everything that I enjoyed. So I did like a random 2-week career exploration. I was like, I haven't really done work in ophthalmology. Let's see, will I like it? Will I not like it? And from day one, I realized, I'm like, wait a minute, this really is a gym within medicine. I'm like, wait, like the surgeons, like they're happy. You get to have lunch, you have regular hours. But the cool thing about it is that you have direct analysis of your pathology. You're able to fix a number of different conditions almost relatively immediately. And for the most part, your patients are going to be very, very happy. So that's what really drove me into the field. And looking back, I wouldn't have it any other way.
You're muted, Emma.
Sorry. Okay, I was gonna say mic drop. As a surgeon,
Right.
I need them fine motor skills. So kudos. Okay, so can you both talk about a challenge that you may have had during medical school and how you overcame it?
Yes, indeed. So one of my biggest challenges in medical school is that I lost my father in my second year of med school, halfway through in the year. Right when you're getting ready to start putting in all your energy and time into studying for USMLE Step 1. And although that was the most difficult time of my life, I knew for a fact that my dad wanted me to go on through medical school, to not take any time off, and just to be the best doctor possible. So, I took that mentality with me, and I used that kind of like motivation, so that he and I in spirit were walking through that process together in order to do well within Step 1. Regardless of where you go to medical school, you're going to have some highs and you're going to have some lows. But if you have the right family support, if you have a good support system outside of medical school, there are plenty of different individuals who will help get you through those difficult times and to celebrate those happy times too.
Man, well said. Well said.
And then for me, I would say one difficulty, because of course, as Aaron said, there are like several. So I guess picking just one, I guess like in applying into a field like ophthalmology, one thing that's kind of thought about is the competitive nature, like the competitiveness of applying ophthalmology. And a lot of people think like your step score is something like big, and even like going into like med school, you always want to do well on your step exam, right? But that wasn't necessarily the reality for me. Like I wanted to, of course, like shoot high, but I didn't get as high as I, aimed. And so I feel like it was probably a bit of like an uphill battle for me, in a sense of like not having that mentality kind of like cloud my perspective in terms of like where I wanted to go, where I wanted to apply, would it be a limiting factor in my decision of what I wanted to do ultimately. So that's probably what the one that I'll use.
Okay, so I know, Aaron, specifically, you said that everything kind of appealed to you, bits and pieces from each field. Can you both speak on how you knew during third year that the core rotations, it's a no for me, dog?
Yeah, so the core rotations, like I said, I enjoy bits and pieces of each individual thing, but nothing in particular was like the light bulb did not go off until I got to ophthalmology. So for example, like I loved family medicine. I did my family medicine rotation over in East St. Louis. I had a blast. It was just like I was treating my own personal family. So I loved outpatient medicine. On my surgery rotation, I rotated in plastic surgery as well as urology and pediatric general surgery. And I loved being in the OR. But my thing was that, I'm not a big fan of the long extended marathon surgeries, even working in OBGYN, I was very nervous because I never had any past experience with OB-GYN, but I love that mixture of both surgery as well as outpatient clinic. And then internal medicine, like no offense to anyone going to IM, but inpatient medicine wasn't really my thing. So, not knowing ophthalmology before that, once I got to ophtho, I was like, wait a minute, like, this has every single thing that I love about medicine in one individual specialty. I think I want to go with this. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely echo those same sentiments. Like even going into medical school, like I knew I wanted to do medicine. Like what aspect, I honestly had no clue. So then going into like third year clerkships, and speaking with some people and like some mentors, and so people would say like, oh, do you like medicine more or do you like surgery more? And I was like, I like them both. So this is not helping, this dichotomy is not really helping me here. And so like going through clerkships, I was like really hoping to have like that aha moment that some people have it, some people don't. And I was like one of those people who was like, man, I want the aha moment. Like I want to know, like once I step into something that like my heart is in it and stuff like that. So like I went through my clerkships, and like even towards the end of my third year, like I still didn't know. Something that I was toying with was like OB-GYN, because I really liked OB-GYN. I was like iffy on internal medicine, but again, like I hadn't like revisited ophthalmology because I only had like the half day in clinic. And so I was like, I really want this elective. The lottery played me the first time around in third year. So like fourth year, I was like, okay, hopefully I get this first. So I like had that first. So I had my ophthalmology elective first. And then I had my OB-GYN AI second. And I like them both, but honestly, like opto, I was like, yo, this is it for me. Like, I love like the physician-physician interaction. I love the patient-physician interaction. I love the way the residents spoke with their patients. I liked like the tactile aspect of opto, the dexterity required for like their surgery. Like, if you've ever seen like an opto surgery, they're actually like pretty amazing. I remember the first time I saw like a tube in somebody's eye, I was like, what is it? Like, what? So I just like everything about it is just like, I love everything about the field. And so like once I like got that movement, I was like, okay, then like there's no like second guessing myself at this point. Like you just got to go for it. Yeah.
Y'all are real passionate. I love it.
You gotta be
like, dang.
She eventually had that aha moment, because let me tell you, my only exposure to ophtho was through surgery of a family member, or my third year, I saw one surgery and I walked by and I saw an eye blown up real big. The ophthalmologist legit was like, and I was like, nah. And I ran right back into my general surgery room. I was like, it's a no for me, dog.
Well, speaking of that though, like I guess I have a question, if that's okay. Exposure early on, like would you like even those who are pre-med who are looking into it, or M1s, M2s, because it seems like you guys kind of got more into it later on, but like, do you have any recommendations looking back on like what you would do if you had the opportunity to be exposed early on?
Yes, indeed. So what I will say is that many medical schools, they unfortunately don't do the best job of exposing their students to ophthalmology. Ophthalmology for majority of med schools is not a required rotation. In addition, for ophtho, you may get 1-2 lectures maximum your first year of medical school. You're still trying to figure out how to study, what it is you may like, what it is you may not like. So it's very easy to get turned off of ophthalmology, and then very few of them may rediscover it later on. In addition, in the field of ophtho, it's very common to meet people who come from dynasties of ophthalmology, where it's like, oh yeah, my grandfather was an ophthalmologist, so is my father, I'm going into it too. But there are different ways which you can kind of get those early introductions into the field. At SLU, we have like the HRC, which is a health resource center. We have what's called the SLU Site Clinic. So every Saturday, that gives you the opportunity to go, basically tech up patients, do a basic visual examination to get some experience as well as volunteerism. There's other opportunities within the National Medical Association, NMA. For example, we have like the MOM program, the Minority Ophthalmology Mentorship Program, as well as with the AAO, the American Academy of Ophthalmology, that allows minority students to have that additional exposure early on, as well as preparation for step one in order to increase your chances of being successful in matching. So if I would have known about that program going into medical school, and if I would have knew about ophtho going into med school, I definitely would have took advantage of that free opportunity.
Yeah, most definitely. And as Aaron said, like depending on like your med school, like majority of the med schools, you don't have that much exposure. Like even our curriculum, we had ophthalmology. It was like a half day. It was like a half a lecture and like our neurology course. Like that's literally the only exposure that we had. And the only reason that I like ended up shadowing is because like my facilitator, it was like for an ethics course, right? And he just like threw it out there. So it was like literally random, right? So I guess like even looking back in like the first 2 years of med school, I probably would have taken advantage of just like looking into like different fields that I'm unfamiliar with more. Because I would just sit on kind of like, do my books, like reading. I wasn't even that much interested in like shadowing because I was like, I want to do well. But actually I wish that I would have like taken that opportunity sooner, because then I could have gotten more involved with like, ophthalmology research and stuff like that, versus it kind of being like a sprint to the finish line versus kind of like, the mile long run where you take your time like going through it.
Oh, thank you. Those sound like very helpful resources.
And then can you both speak on mentorship, if you have any mentors? Were they in ophthalmology? And then do you have any advice for people who are really, really shy and kind of don't know how to make those connections?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had quite a few mentors upon entering into medical school, primarily through our SNMA chapter, Student National Medical Association. There are many upperclassmen that help to pass down books, to help pass down notes, and to help show me the way so that I was going to be successful within medical school. I found mentors in ophthalmology towards my third year once I discovered the field. Like I mentioned with the National Medical Association, every single year the NMA has their scientific convention. Last year was in Honolulu, Hawaii. So for ophthalmology, we have a specific program called the RAB Venable Excellence in Ophthalmology program, where I actually met Belinda. It was an all expenses paid trip to go to Hawaii to present your research, in addition to meet all of these wonderful minority eye surgeons from all over the country. So from going to that conference right before applying for the cycle of ophthalmology, I was able to make some fantastic mentors who I'm going to carry on with me for the rest of my life and career.
Yes, like 100%. I went to Johns Hopkins for undergrad, and so I was involved with like our MAPS chapter, and so that's how I knew like of SNMA going into like med school. So that's one thing that I definitely like kept with me in terms of like our curriculum and stuff like that. The school itself, one of my mentors actually came out of like my global health experience, because he was a facilitator for a different thing that we have to do. We have like humanities groups that we do, and he was like our facilitator. And the one time I just kind of mentioned like, ophtho in general, because I knew he was an ophthalmologist. And from there I ended up like working on a research project with him. And I guess one thing I will say about like having mentors, be specific with your mentors about like what role you want them to play like in your life and in your like academic career. I think it's important to have somebody who's like direct with you, in terms of like giving you honest feedback. You don't want like yes men, and you also don't want people who are like negative Nancy's, as they say. But you want to like kind of like set out your application and say like, do you think I would be like a competitive enough applicant to do this, getting advice like that, because it can definitely take you a long way. And then completely echoing what Erin said in terms of like SNMA. So SNMA, me going to like the conference is how I found out about like the RAB Venable program and the MOM program. And at that point I had wished I was a first year, knowing all the perks that they get, with in terms of like mentorship and like studying for STEP and stuff like that. But honestly, like going to the NMA conference in Hawaii was like a game changer for me in terms of like being able to network, seeing a lot of physicians of like ophthalmologists of color, that has like more of an impact than you may think it does. And so like getting those connections, meeting like my peers, and like even going on interviews. Like I saw Erin on interviews. I saw people from like this program on interviews. So it was nice to see, familiar faces along the way. So I think mentorship is honestly like essential in your path. And even if your mentor may have started off in a different field, that doesn't mean they can't be useful in your process towards ophthalmology or whatever specialty that you choose.
Where were y'all my first year?
You mad? You mad though?
That question was me asking for a friend, aka me, even though I already am a resident, but that's none of my business.
Yeah, no do-overs.
Thank God. Sorry, Lillian. You almost there.
Almost there.
So Belinda, you spoke on how you linked up with one of your mentors and you were able to push out some research. Can you both explain if you did research? If you did, was it helpful towards like matching into ophthalmology, or do you need research? Kind of that whole thing.
Oh, okay. So like for me, so like Penn State, they have like a medical student research project that's required of everybody, like all their students. But the caveat on that is like it just has to be completed by January of the year that you graduate. So like it can be done anytime. And so actually, so since I was interested in like global health, when I went like on my first global health trip, I kind of like used that to fulfill my research requirement, which was not ophthalmology related and it wasn't published, but it was still like, something that I did, and something that I could speak about on interviews.
Where'd you go to?
So I went to Zambia actually. So just like a little, plug for Penn State and the Global Health program. So essentially it's like a 4-year program. You start your first year, you go to a site, kind of like get like cultural immersion, know the community, you do a little hands-on work, then you return, then you do like curriculum throughout your other 3 years. And then your 4th year, you return to have a more like clinical role.
Wow.
So like when I went the first time, I was like, oh, let me try and kill two birds with one stone. So I did like research with that, but again, like it wasn't published. It was just, you know, something for me to do, like a write-up and stuff like that. And so from that, because my mentor was like in the global health program, so then I was speaking with him about like my interests in like global health and stuff like that. And then like, you know, combining them with ophthalmology. And so, and working with him, that's how I was able to like write up a manuscript for like ophthalmology, like global health. And then like, I literally submitted it shortly before my application, because that was actually my only technical like submission like on my application. Like I had like research things. I was also working with the residents, and I will say don't play residents sometimes, because they will help you, right? So that's how I like one of my projects was actually like working with the resident, like getting data, and like was also writing in the process of like writing another manuscript with one of the residents. Okay. So for that, so yeah, don't sleep on residents, don't sleep on your mentors. Everybody can like help you in your process of like finding research, finding publications, and even like it was probably like a month, like just around a month, that I like cranked out that paper, because I was like, man, this is gonna have to happen, right? So yeah, so I think like research, and also just in general, even if like your initial research is not in ophthalmology, don't count yourself out, because I think like part of the point of having research, like ophthalmology is a very like, you know, scientific field, like surgery versus like clinical, but I think part of the aspect of having research is just to show that you have like, you're like curious, right? You have scientific inquiry. So whether or not it's like in ophthalmology or not, I don't think it will hurt you if it's not ophthalmology like related per se. I just, you know, throw that in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the cool thing with the admissions for ophthalmology is that they understand that most people don't discover it until later on in medical school. So they're lenient when it comes to the type of research that you're presenting on your application. So for me, I had research from my first year in plastic surgery as well as my second year in urology. I only had one case report that I did in ophthalmology when I did an away rotation right before I got ready to apply. But, you know, just like what Belinda said, having research shows that you're able to finish something that you started. It shows that you're diligent, you're able to work with data. And that's really what programs want to see. And it's like, you know, you will see some people that may have like dozens of research papers and this, that, and that. But it's like, at the end of the day, I personally don't think that matters by having 16 papers versus having like only 3. Like, research in my opinion.
Ditto, yeah. And at the end of the day, if you get if you put it on your application, just be prepared to talk about anything that you put on your application. Because if you're putting like the 16th publication that you had and they ask you about it and you can't talk about it, that's a strike against you, right? So definitely like invest in the projects that you're doing and be able to talk about them intelligently. Because at the end of the day, if you did the work, you should be able to talk about it without any problems.
And then also a really quick note before it skips my mind. So the SF match application is different compared to the ERAS application. I did not know personally that there is a character limit and there is a line limit on the SF match application. So for ERAS, you can put as much stuff as you want, but for SF match, you kind of have to format things a certain specific way or you will run out of space. You will run out of line. So just keep that in mind when you're getting ready to apply.
Okay. And then because most people that go into ophtho kind of find out later in the game, how important would you say step 1 scores are, or even step 2 scores? Do you need like the 260 to 55, which I did not get, but yeah, what are scores looking like from what you've seen?
So scores, I will say they're somewhat important when it comes to ophtho because it's a very competitive field. But I'm not afraid to admit I did not break 250. I'm not going to say my step score, but I had a very average step score, like nationally, just like from everyone taking the exam, not even for like ophtho. For step 2, you know, I had a very good improvement. So I was able to show that on my application. That does make you look good. Some people are like, oh, well, I'm not going to take step 2, da, 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 da. If you have the opportunity to take it, and if it's going to show improvement, I highly suggest that you do take it because ophtho is also an early match. So you have to push things a little bit earlier. But with step scores, once you get the interview, nobody cares about what you made on your step score. It matters about the interview day. Can you work with other people? Are you a good fit for the program? Is the program a good fit for you? So I will say, you know, definitely take steps seriously and everything, but it's not the end all be all for matching into ophthalmology and matching at good programs too.
Right. I agree with that 100%. Because I was like looking up these numbers yesterday on like the SF website. And so like for our year, so for the 2020 match applicants, the average step score was a 245. Last year was like a 244. Right. And as Erin said, like I did not break 250 either. And so like that was probably like, as I mentioned, like one of the things, like I asked myself like, okay, Belinda, would you be more mad if like you tried to apply and didn't match, or if you didn't apply and didn't know, right? And I said, listen, we're not operating in fear this year. So I went for it, right? And so, so I would just like, so as Erin said, like your step score, of course, they're going to look at that. But once you get the interview, people are not worried about that. You're a whole person. So most programs, even some of the best programs, are looking at your whole application. So if you're like weak in your step score or one area of your application, know like your strength in another area and be able to highlight that. You can like use your personal statement to highlight areas, you know what I mean, that you want people to focus more on if your step score was off. So don't let like your a lower step score be the be all end all for your journey into opto or any other like competitive specialty like that.
And in fact, Belinda, I forgot, we didn't even say what we're going for residency.
Oh, you're right. Sorry.
Yeah. So Belinda, where are you going for residency?
So I will be at Albert Einstein Montefiore in New York City in the Bronx for all 4 years because it's an integrated program. So that's where
That's major.
And Erin, you?
And then I will be attending the University of Iowa for my ophthalmology residency. It's also integrated. So the cool thing about opto is that this coming year, I believe 100% of programs are going to be integrated. And what that means is that you should have about at least 3 months of ophthalmology within your intern year on top of your internal medicine or surgery like requirements and such. Some programs have a required prelim year within surgery. I did not apply to some of those programs. Others have it solely for internal medicine. So yeah, I mean, I think that it's definitely a win-win. So you don't have to like travel to multiple places throughout residency. You can just stay at the one location.
That's clutch.
Ooh, we have a question about can you talk more about the timeline for the SF match? Because someone was asking, will we still have to apply to both ARAS and SF match this cycle? I don't know if you know the specifics of that, but
yeah. So honestly, I'm not sure if you're going to have to apply to both. Once like the applications and stuff open up, they should be able to give you that information. But for us, even after like I knew I matched at Iowa, I knew that it was integrated, I still had to like technically apply via ERAS just to like have that spot selected. And I mean, yeah, it's additional money and stuff, but I mean, it's something that we had to get done. If they could figure out a way to cut out ERAS altogether, I think that would be wonderful. Because I mean, money, it gets expensive when you're applying to residency. So if you could save $1 or $2, that's definitely going to help out. But for the timeline, traditionally, the applications, I believe, open up early within the summertime. Traditionally, you want to have your application submitted by the second week of August. What I mean by that is everything. Because if you don't have one letter recommendation in, it won't be completely like submitted and sent out to all the specific programs. And then I would say that most of my interview invitations, I started getting notifications back like late September, early October to have interviews for most of October as well as November. So there's about a month period where you don't hear anything, and that's okay. You're going to freak out. You may try to look at the online Google spreadsheet and be like, is there something wrong with my application? No. That's traditionally how it works within our field of opto.
Right. And to add on to what Erin said in terms of like the timeline, so because we had to work with like 2 different application systems, so we had like the SF match and we had ARAS. So we're working with 2 different things here, right? So one difference is that, so like SF match, you are only allowed 3 recommendation letters. That's it, right? So ARAS, you can ask for like as many recommenders as you want, and you can assign, which program that you want this recommendation to go to and that recommendation to go to. For the ophthalmology, you can't. So all the recommenders that you ask, every single recommendation that's in is like going to go to like all the programs. So you also have to be mindful with that, because like once you send out the link, there's essentially like no taking it back. So that's the one thing. And then also in terms of what Erin mentioned in terms of like the timeline. So of course, like you submit towards the end of August, or not the end of August, by the second week of August, as he mentioned. And so the thing about that is that like, so ARAS opens like September 15th that you submit your application. You may end up hearing, or it's likely that you will hear from some of your prelim programs before you hear from any ophthalmology program. So like, don't be like surprised by that, because even though you like submit like a whole month before ARAS opens. So the application itself, it's a little like, the application timeline is a little finicky, because then we also like finish early so that we can then rank like our like ARAS prelim program.
Yeah, and then another note about that is something else on the SF Match application, which I was not expecting, is that they require for us to submit a college transcript. So you don't have to do that for your ERAS application. So just a heads up, if you're applying this cycle, just go. I mean, so I don't know how much consideration they took, if any consideration for the application process. I don't think at all. I mean, they looked at it, they're like, oh, okay, like you did good in college. I'm like, oh, thanks. But like, so I would say just get the electronic copy of your college transcript like sooner than later, just so that it's not a hassle hassle because it was a bit of a surprise to me. But that's like the only like other major difference between the two.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm like, I don't need that negativity in my life. Why you need to see my transcript? Shoot.
digging up that dirt from way back.
Right.
So just to make sure I have this right, you guys have to spend money and apply to SF Match.
Mhm.
And then you have to spend some more money, the same money that we all spend in
Wow.
ERAS or ERAS.
Indeed.
Yeah. Because I mean, for us, we had to do both like prelim as well as TY programs, transitional years.
Right.
But for the years coming up ahead, hopefully they'll. So the years coming up ahead, like we said, they're all going to be integrated. But hopefully they'll try to eliminate having to apply with ERAS, so you're not having to spend as much money. Because I mean, SF Math, it's expensive either way.
It's $100 alone to register for SF Match. And so the thing with like applying through the SF, like their application, so you're applying for like a PGY 2 year, which is why you need ERAS or ERAS for like your prelim transitional year. And so that's why we had to do like 2 different application systems. So you also have to be like pre-organized when it comes to like dealing with things. Otherwise you can literally get like lost or like all up in everything.
It sounds like a lot of moving wheels. A lot.
Yeah.
What does SF stand for anyway?
It's like San Francisco Match, I think.
Oh.
Why is it San Francisco?
Underwhelming.
So, and also like all their timelines are based on like West Coast time too. So, you know, keep that in mind.
No.
While we're on the subject, somebody was asking about just the like average cost of that combined ERAS and SF Match process, or just kind of throw out a number. What you guys, you know?
This is like minus travel. This is like minus like transportation. So just like the application itself.
Yeah, just the app. I guess we could keep it separate. First the application and then like the travel.
I think for me, applications alone, like 2,500 easily. Maybe even more. Yeah, I think like 2,500 for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So I applied to a lot of programs, almost every single program. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it was a tough decision, but I had to do what I needed to do. So it was more than that 2,500. But there are actually scholarships that are out there specifically for minorities applying into ophthalmology. I was a recipient of the Dr. David Kearney McDonough Scholarship in ENT and ophthalmology. It's through the National Medical Fellowship. That was a $5,000 scholarship that was able to basically pay for all of my applications on top of some of my travel. So if you're applying this year, definitely do reach out. National Medical Fellowship, definitely do apply. I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful scholarship. So although things can get very expensive, there are different opportunities and ways to kind of help alleviate your costs.
Okay, and so since we're on the topic of interviews, do you mind sharing how many you applied to, and if you feel comfortable, how many interviews you went on?
Yeah, so like I said, I applied to nearly every program. I attended 15 interviews. I went on 15 interviews. I had quite a few more as far as invitations, but I chose just because like time constraints and stuff like that. But I mean, so for ophthalmology, when you look at the numbers, they typically say like, oh, you need to have like 12 programs ranked if you're looking to have like a 90+% chance of matching and stuff like that. I would say like go on however many interviews that you feel personally comfortable with, knowing that you're going to match just in general, because I've seen some people who have gone on like 12 and then they cut it off, although they had plenty of interview invitations and they may not have had the opportunity to match. And I've also seen like on the other side there. With the interviews, though, I would say, go to your dream schools, go to schools that you feel like you have a good chance of matching at, and also have a few safety places in addition, because you don't want to just interview at all top 20 places or something like that, and then you may not have the opportunity to be able to match.
Right. Ditto. So I was like looking up them, as I mentioned, like I was looking up the numbers yesterday. And so like for the 2020 cohort, so the average match applicant applied to 77 programs, right? So let that sink in. So me myself, so I applied to more than that. I applied to like 90, I think, something like that. I think there's like 119, 120, somewhere around there, programs. So, and then like I went on, I believe like 8 interviews. And I guess like also to put it into perspective, so like on the SF Match, one thing that's interesting about it is that like each school that you apply to, the majority of them will put like their interview dates like on the side, so you can see like the potential like interview dates. And so like one thing that I remember doing is like looking at the schools. Of course, like I applied to schools, right? But the schools that I really wanted to hear back from. And so like I made like a little Google sheet and like put like, if I was to be asked by this school, like what is my preferred date? Because like once they send out the email, you want to be kind of like prompt and like responding. So I like my little Google sheet that put out like my desired date if they were to ask me like when to go. And that made it easier for me in terms of like regionally, so I wouldn't have to like try and travel like back and forth too many places. And stuff like that. So, and also because they put, you see like their dates on the side, also do know that some programs have overlapping dates, and most interview dates, most schools don't have more than like 3 days that they interview. So you just have to be like mindful in scheduling. So, because one thing that also happened to me is that like I had to drop an interview because 2 programs were scheduled on the same date, and that's it. Yep, and that's the only date that they had available. So I kind of had to like choose like, okay, like which program would I like prefer to go to at the end of the day based on just my own personal preferences. So I had to end up dropping an interview like because of that. So just know that like there's some of the interview dates are very limited. So be strategic in like how you're planning your like interview schedule in terms of like traveling. And if it comes down to it, like which program would you prefer to go to if you have to pick between one?
Yeah, I would say, you know, organization is very, very important during the interview season for ophtho, because you can easily end up like at the wrong airport. You can end up at the wrong hotel on the same day. Like stuff happens. Stuff that, you know, I actually missed one flight because I was stuck in traffic trying to get to Chicago O'Hare. But I mean, luckily I was able to get out to go to where I needed to be. But, you know, organization is absolutely key. You know, we do have the Google spreadsheet. I know that there's criticism about it and stuff, but there's a lot of good information. Traditionally, there's like a timeline for like, you know, usually this program lets you know first and then this program lets you know last. That typically does not change like year to year. So I would say, you know, if you have the opportunity, go look at the Google spreadsheet from last year and just kind of utilize that information too, to see like map out like when programs are going to have like their interview dates and stuff like that. And just try to keep things regionally and save money as far as like taking the train. Like I took Amtrak when I was on the East Coast to go from city to city. That was very helpful. But I would additionally say try not to have like an interview like day to day where you're traveling across country. Because I had one time where I had to go from North Carolina and travel all the way to Oregon, to Portland, Oregon overnight. And I didn't get in until 2 a.m. and I had a 7 a.m. interview on a Saturday morning. So there's sometimes you're going to have to do what you got to do, but like if you organize yourself, then it'll help.
Yeah, and just like adding on to that to try and like cut down on like costs in terms of like also like being regionally. If you know somebody in like the city that you're going to and like you're cool with them or whatever, don't be afraid to like reach out and be like, hey, can I, you know, stay the night with you or whatever? Like, do you mind me like, you know, staying in your place? Granted, like some people do prefer to have like their own space during interviews. Like me, listen, I'm gonna stay at your place, right? I'm gonna save my money. I'm gonna save my points. And also like, so Penn State has a program like an alumni like host program where like they can try and match you up with an alumni who went to whatever school that you're like gonna interview at, so that you can stay the night and you don't have to pay for hotel costs. That only worked for me one time. The other time, so I never had to do a hotel because I ended up staying with people. And as Aaron mentioned, like, you know, use your transportation wisely. Sometimes I drove. I even took the mega bus to a few interviews. I may or may not recommend based on like your time, you know, give yourself ample time to get to where you need to go, because sometimes, you know, the bus is not reliable. But yeah, just, you know, be mindful of the amount of money that you like want to spend during this process, and then kind of like being strategic about how you plan things.
Hey, Megabus is better than Greyhound, at least.
I'm telling you, you know, you get the Wi-Fi when it works. You know, you can try it. It's like, it's an underrated gem. Yeah.
The lesson that we have gained from Belinda's answer is y'all better be nice and make friends, because if you ain't popular, you're going to be spending a lot of money.
I'm telling you, if you really... it adds up. If you talk about like hotels, flights, like driving, gas, like it really adds up. Yeah. So
don't burn bridges.
Right. So shout out to the people who let me sleep on their couch.
Don't burn bridges.
Shout out to y'all. Y'all facilitated Belinda's success. We appreciate y'all. So next question. We have a lot of questions about the interview process. So first question is like, any tips while you're interviewing? What things did you look for in a program? I know this is all like lumped up, but this is one person. And then any bad experiences you had while interviewing.
Yes, indeed. So I would say for the interview, as far as like tips and stuff, definitely show up on time, know where it is that you need to go beforehand, and just be prepared, look presentable, be prepared to talk about anything that is on your application. I feel like the opto interviews were very relaxed. They were extremely chill, in my opinion. There was only one program that I went to where it was just one solo interview where it was myself and 10 people on like a panel interviewing me, but it wasn't even that intimidating. Just about every other program that I went to, it's like you're interviewing with 1 or 2 people in like 4 up to like 7 or 9 different rooms. And they may have like a specific question about like, well, why do you want to come to our program? What makes you interested about ophthalmology versus like, they may have like an ethical question or something like that. For what was the other part of the question now?
Oh, any bad experiences?
And then there's another one.
Oh, what did you look for in a program? Sounds like dating.
Yes. So what's to look for in a program? So in ophthalmology, I felt like I wanted to look for a program where I'm going to have great surgical experiences. So if you go to a program in cities that have lots of opto programs, they may have slightly lower surgical count numbers for like cataracts, glaucoma, retina, plastics, and stuff like that. So I wanted to go somewhere where I knew I was going to get a very wide variety of the different cases. I also wanted to go to a program where they had faculty represented for every single subspecialty. And I wanted to go to a program where I knew that the residents were happy, where the faculty, they were excellent teachers. And that's the reason why, like I ranked Iowa like #1, because in my opinion, I felt like it was a dream. It had every single thing that I was looking for. Although I'm still a little bit nervous about moving to Iowa City, like I ain't gonna lie. I know that I'm going to be
weather.
Yeah, the cold, the weather, but I know I'm going to be great.
It's just the weather.
It's not just the weather.
Well, so the University of Iowa, the chair of our department, he's actually Black. It's Dr. Keith Carter. He is an extremely famous oculoplastic surgeon. He was also the president of the American Academy of Ophthalmology. He truly is who I want to be in my future. So that's another big reason why I know I'm going to be in good hands at Iowa. So
nice.
Perfect.
Wow.
Yeah. Literally ditto. I feel like me and Aaron always like say the same things, but like we're just being honest, right? So in terms of like interview day, as Aaron mentioned, like show up, look presentable. You can like kind of look up the program a little bit beforehand, so you can have like things fresh in your mind. Know your application, because they can literally, anything that you list is fair game for them to ask. So be prepared to like have an answer to anything that's on your application. In terms of like, what was it, like any bad experiences? For ophthalmology, I don't remember like any negative experiences that like I can think of during my application. During like the interview process. I will say, like, because ophthalmology is like such a small community, you will see some of the same faces like over and over again. So don't be rude like when you see people, because you will see these people again, right? In terms of like what I looked for in the program, one of my major things is that I wanted to work with like a very diverse population, because where I go to med school, I don't have that as much. And so I wanted to, diversity was like a big thing for me. Number 2, like, were the residents happy? Did they look like each other? And so a lot of programs, they'll have like your like pre-interview day where it may be like an outing, it may be some sort of a social, it may be a sit down dinner. Like every program has its own feel. And that's actually like one thing that you can use to like kind of gauge, like how are these residents like outside of the the workplace. And also you can also use that as a time to kind of like ask the residents like their perspective on certain things that may help you on your actual interview day as well. And then like for the interviews itself, it was a mix. I've been on like a kind of like a speed dating interview where literally you're interviewing with every single person from the department. It was like 15-minute rotations, literally the whole morning, right? So that was like a little intense, because it literally felt like speed dating, like in one room, out the next, in the next one. Some of them were like one-on-one. I've sat on kind of like panels where it was like 2 to 1, like 2 people versus one of me, or like 3 people and one of me. And then like I had a similar one to Aaron where it was like literally like 7 people all on the side of the table, and I'm just sitting there like, hi, so yeah, and sometimes like initially like it can feel intimidating, but like if you know yourself, you can be your best advocate. Just like be yourself, be calm when speaking to people, and just be honest, like, you know what I mean, with who you are and stuff like that. So I guess those are like my interview day tips.
I had a follow-up question.
Okay, yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, just like real quick. It's like for the interviews, usually you come in, they have like the PowerPoint presentation where they talk about the program, the surgical numbers, X, Y, and Z, what the program has to offer. And then one half of the group usually goes on the tour of the facilities, and then the other half will usually go on an interview. The hardest thing I thought of was like trying to figure out when they're like, oh, so what questions do you have for us?
Right.
Like most of your questions are like already answered by the residents and stuff. But I mean, you can ask easy questions like, oh, so like what keeps you here at the program? What do you like about the program? Like, because at the end of the day, you're interviewing the program too, as they're interviewing you.
That's an excellent point. And also in terms of like the interview day too. So some programs had like only like half day interviews. So either like, the morning half or the afternoon half. Some programs had all day interviews. So like you have to be there at 7 a.m. and you are likely not leaving until 5 p.m. So like be ready for like that variability, because I guess like one thing that like we may not talk about as much as how exhausting it can become on this interview trail. So like don't underestimate the level of exhaustion you may feel like going throughout the process, because it's normal, but like do things that won't like burn you out in the process. Yeah.
And the cheek muscles gonna start to hurt.
Listen, by the end of the day, I'm like, is my face
tired?
Right.
Right. You don't know if you're smiling anymore.
Right.
I got some nice teeth.
Oh my goodness.
And just to speak on a point, as someone who is a resident now, looking back, those pre-interview dinners, how they always tell you, oh, this is really relaxed. Just
don't let them play you.
Stuff. We're judging you.
Right.
So don't act crazy. Still, I mean, yes, be a little bit relaxed, but always be on your P's and Q's, because we are judging you, and we will
keep your eyes on the prize.
Right.
Keep your eyes on the prize, guys.
I have gone back to the program director. They would love an applicant, but then you see them in the relaxed standpoint, and you're like, it's a no for me, dog. And two, remember what program you're interviewing at, because you go on so many interviews.
What?
Yes, I have had people say the wrong name.
Oh no.
And you're like, and your heart falls into your guts for them.
It's like I'm a head out now.
Right.
Got to pull one of those. I'm gonna just head out.
Like Mortal Kombat.
I'll let myself out.
If you watch Mortal Kombat, it's like, finish him, fatality. So remember that.
Right. So is that a yes or?
Right.
I've seen it and it's so awkward. Okay. So more questions on applications and interviewing. Someone wanted to know, can you speak on programs that are strong in diversity that you applied to, or anything that you noticed in terms of diversity in the ophtho residency trail?
Yeah, so on the SF Match application, they recently added a box on there that you can check to indicate that you are an underrepresented minority individual. And I'm not gonna lie, like some interviews you go to and it's like, okay, you know what schools kind of like looked at that box a little bit more. It's like, hey, like, what's up? Like, you see all your friends there, But what I will definitely say is that in ophthalmology, our numbers for minorities, they're very low. It's less than 2.5%. And they're actively trying to increase that. And it's not just the Black ophthalmologists trying to increase it. It's our other racial counterparts too. So they're doing everything that they can to get us into the field, to keep us into the field itself. There are certain programs that I felt like a bit more diverse than others. One program that I definitely do apply because I didn't away there was Duke. Duke had, at the time, 3 Black male residents. They have 2 Black male attendings in glaucoma, and they also have a Black female optometrist. And I loved my away rotation there. And I felt like, it's a wonderful place, So there are plenty of programs out there that I feel like have a bit more diversity, but, don't shy away from the programs where you may not see too many people that look like you or the cities. Like, for example, University of Iowa, I'm like, wait a minute, y'all, like, I don't know. But once you get there and you realize like how great the program it is and how happy the residents are, you can easily see yourself becoming acclimated into the program as well as within the city.
Most definitely. I don't have like much more to add to that. That's like 100% spot on. And to be honest, like even like there may be interviews that you go on and you may be the only minority face that's visible, because that did happen to me. So don't like be intimidated by that like scenario, because at the end of the day, you need to exude confidence, right? These people are not looking for somebody who's shy, who's afraid, who like, you know what I mean? Who's afraid of like their reality. At the end of the day, ophthalmology as a whole, as a field, is not that diverse. So that's not like too far different from who your colleagues may be. It's very unlikely that you may have like a co-Black, resident. But again, that won't take away from like your the experience that you'll have, in a sense, in terms of like your technical skills, your clinical skills. At the end of the day, you need all of that in order to be like a phenomenal physician, whether you're working with a diverse population or not. So always keep that in mind.
That's it. That's it. Be confident. Show them that melanin magic, and let them. I'm not gonna say what I was gonna say. Anyways, moving on. How did you all put together your application? Someone wanted to know, especially if you find out later on in the process, and being that the process of applying ophthalmology is so different than core, like primary care. Can you all speak on how you put together your applications?
For the application for SMH, so there are similarities to ERAS. So it's like, your traditional personal statement. I would say work on that in bits and pieces if you can, or sooner than later, so you can get like a good first draft. I did have my mentors go through my application as well as my personal statement and stuff prior to submitting. I feel like that helped out tremendously. And just like I said, because there is a character limit on the SF Match application, try to figure out what are your biggest highlights that you want to add to the application itself. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar to when you got ready to apply to med school, when, it's not too much different, I would say. There is like a slight little, almost like 3-sentence cover letter that you have to put for the SF Match application. And it just talks about, what is it that you're looking for in your future, whether it be academics, community-based medicine. And yeah, no one ever asked me about that on the interviews though.
Yeah. Similar. I think definitely like take time to like do your personal statement, because you can use that as like kind of like an advocacy point for you, right? So let other people see, of course, like other people that you trust and will give you like valuable feedback, right? Let people see like your personal statement so that you can make edits off of that. Have like know like what you did during your time in medical school, because you'll have to list, like similar to the ERAS application, you have to list whatever extracurricular you did, if you participated in research, things of that nature. So have that together. Yeah.
And then a final point here is that I know that specialties like ophtho, derm, and ortho, they talk about like research step 1, Have some service on your application. Us in ophthalmology, we are very service oriented. Many programs, they have international projects. If you can talk about a service project, I feel like that'll help distinct you, make you more like different compared to like the next person. So yeah. And have hobbies to put down on there too, because I mean, they want to know like what makes you interested, what makes you stuff. So.
Right. Honestly, you do not want to be a robot, and you don't want to work with robots either. So yeah.
Unless you're surgeon on the Da Vinci.
I was gonna say for hobbies, stuff like bird watching, sun gazing, anything with the eyes.
But actually, all of my hobbies, none of my hobbies had to do with the eyes, to be honest with you.
Oh, man.
I remember put like tennis, because like I'm an avid tennis fan, so I can put that down, like things that represent you,
I feel it.
Williams,
ophthalmology version, but
saving your vision.
Right. Hand-eye coordination.
Oh, I think there's a question over here, and just to kind of echo kind of what you were talking about, the cover letter, like, can you tell us a little bit more about what you see yourself doing in the future? Because I know there's room for fellowships and all of that stuff. Yeah, could you just talk a little bit about that?
Yes, indeed. So, although what I tell people is that I am keeping an open mind to residency as far as every single surgical subspecialty, I am a little bit more geared towards the oculoplastics. So when I first started into ophthalmology, in fact, the second attending I worked with, she's an oculoplastic surgeon. I love the versatility because they kind of bridge the gap between ophthalmology, ENT, plastic surgery, as well as neurosurgery. So there's so many cool procedures that they get to do. So oculoplastics it can be a 2-year fellowship if you match specifically in what they call ASOPers. It's a separate distinction within ophthalmology itself. It's extremely, extremely competitive, but it's a very rewarding field. If I don't do oculoplastics, I mean, I love glaucoma. I love retina. Glaucoma is the #1 cause of blindness within African-American patients. So I feel like it truly is a service in a cool field that has so much technology and so many things just to like discover. So like I said, keeping an open mind, but I do like oculoplastics.
And for me, I'm one of the people who's like keeping an open mind, because I'm like, unsure, I want to say.
Mhm.
But as of now, if I honestly were to like pick one, I'm like really interested in cornea. I think the idea of like cornea transplants is so interesting to me. So I like cornea, I like retina. I think oculoplastics is amazing. And the fact that like a lot of different things, I feel like people underestimate like how many crossovers ophthalmology has with like different things. So usually you're just thinking like the eye, but it's much more than that. And I think that's one thing that like honestly like interests me about the field in general. And then I guess like I'm interested in global health, so maybe somehow like tying that into my like future career. Definitely want to stay in academics. I find like value in teaching and stuff like that. So.
And how long is the residency? And I don't know if we ever talked about when you actually find out when you match.
Oh, yeah. So residency for us is technically 4 years. So it's 1 year of your prelim year for either internal medicine or surgery that's integrated within ophtho. And then it's technically 3 years for ophthalmology itself. And because we are an early application, we are in early match. So we found out, I want to say it was the second week of January.
Yeah, 14th.
Like January. Yeah, January 14th. So it's like we don't have like a traditional match day like everyone else, but like I think it's 7 a.m. Or 5 a.m. Pacific time is where you can
California
log on to the
time.
SF Match. Yeah, you can log on to SF Match and see exactly where you matched at, and it was a very happy day.
Yeah. And I will say like it's a quick turnover because literally, so like as you mentioned, so your majority of your interviews are like between like October and December. Your last interview is like mid to end of, I think it was like December 17th was probably like the last date a program was offering. Then we submitted our rank list by January 7th and we found out January 14th. So it's literally 1 week from submitting your application and then the following week you find out like if you match and then like where you're going. So it's a pretty quick turnover in that regard.
Wow. Congratulations, y'all. Just like
Yeah, for real, congratulations.
like your excellence, how much you have achieved, to be able to go through such a quick process, a stressful process, and to do it so gracefully and successfully. Because y'all, ophtho is competitive and not everyone is successful. And I'm sure it's real awkward if January 14th come around and your friend's hitting you up and you have to let them know.
Right.
You know? So, but we're not going to end on that sad note. A couple more questions. Number one, do you have any advice for anyone that's going through the trenches, going through like a really rough time in medical school, and doesn't quite see the light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, I would say, like I mentioned previously, you're going to have happy times, you're going to have tough times. If there's anyone that you can reach out to, whether it be a medical school classmate, your family, or friends who are outside of medical school, definitely do go for it. Here at SLU, one thing I love is that they offer free counseling sessions to all the medical students. I want to say it's like up to 6 of them that are free per semester or per year. I took advantage of them when my father passed away. I took advantage of them prior into going into studying for step one because I wanted to make sure that my mind was in the right place before I went to do this very difficult, challenging thing. So, don't be afraid to ask for help because best believe other people, they may be more willing to ask for help. You don't have to struggle alone if you don't need to.
Right. Agree with that like 100% because even like during my own like academic journey or whatever, one of my family members ended up getting sick as well, which caused me to like take some time off. So I think that it's important to like reach out to people. Number one, know your support system, right? So know the people that who you can speak to, and also recognize that although like you may have like friends and families, it's not like a negative thing to like seek like outside help, right? So as Erin mentioned, like Penn State has the same thing where like they offer like their like mental health and like that department is like pretty big in terms of like wanting students to like reach out. Like even now they're doing like Zoom things, with students and stuff like that, just to like check in on to see how students are doing. So because like at the end of the day, medical school is a difficult process, right? You don't need to add any stressors, and you also don't need to feel like you're in the trenches alone. Because even like being a minority, since this is minority platform, I feel like imposter syndrome is also a very real thing, and you can't let that like go to your mind in terms of, oh, can I like match to this program, or oh, like can I do this field? It may be competitive. I may not like be like one of the best people for it. Oh, like I'm in the midst of this like exam and I really don't like see the purpose of this. Is this really for me? Definitely like take the time to like ask yourself those questions, but at the same time, don't underestimate like your greatness, because at the end of the day, like people are going through the same thing that you are. If you need to take your time, take your time. If you need to speak to somebody, but don't let like a difficult moment determine or like take away from any like future progression that you may have. You know what I mean? So.
That was so profound. You were like, don't underestimate your greatness. And I think everyone, no matter what specialty you're going into, where you are in your journey, don't underestimate your greatness. Thank you. That was really good. One last question that someone just messaged us in the chat, and I think it's really important that we talk about, are aways. Did you do any aways? How to be successful in them?
Yes. So I did 2 away rotations. And I mean, I'm not sure how like COVID-19 is going to affect you guys when it comes to away rotations, but I did 1 away at Duke, and I did another away at Mass Pioneer with Harvard. And I felt that with the away rotations to be successful, you know, like what we've been saying, show up on time, be punctual, try to figure out how to get epic access at your away rotation site. It doesn't matter if you're writing notes or not writing notes, because you want to look up your patients prior to clinic. You want to look up your patients the day before surgery, so that you come in knowing the anatomy, having targeted questions that are going to show that you are interested in the case and the patient, but also, you know, to kind of spark conversation with your attending. If you are on call with a resident, do the best as possible to make their lives easier. If it's like, oh, like, you know, hey, can you go do this? Can you go do that? Be like, oh yeah, absolutely. Carry the bag. Make sure that things are as organized as possible for your residents. Try your best not to slow down clinic, but also, you know, ask insightful questions as far as like, hey, like, can I use the slit lamp to look into here after the attending has gone through? And those will make you shine. Like, because I mean, you don't have to do like, just don't do the most. That's my main thing. Don't do the most. Do just enough.
Yo,
Actually.
do just enough. That's real.
Right.
And for me, like, I can't even like personally speak to that, because I actually did not end up doing any aways. So like, if you're unable to do aways, don't think that you will not match opto because you didn't do any aways. But I would say, like, do everything that you would do at your home program, right? So if you're showing up, you know what I mean, on time, being punctual, looking at patients and stuff like that, you need to take that same energy to that away, you know, that you're going to do. Because at the end of the day, you're a student, they're a teacher, and you're a learner. So you're going there to learn, and you're going, also, if you're going to a program, you want to show that you're interested in like what you came there to do, right? So
Right. So actually, just be a good pupil.
yeah, there you go.
That's it.
Oh my goodness.
There you go.
And like a final note with that though, many away rotations actually have like scholarships that are available. So I did get a scholarship from Duke as well as from Mass Pioneer. So I mean, for, you know, if you don't have to pay the money, don't pay the money. There's plenty of different stuff that are out there to help you to get there. Reach out to family members if it's like a specific area that you want to go to, if you have family options, but don't try to be spending thousands of dollars for away rotations, you know.
Right, because away rotations
That's real.
get very costly. And I think there's like a list of like underrepresented programs too that like give out money. And you may have had it like on your other like episodes and stuff like that. So people should definitely like look into that.
You know. Yeah.
They got that
Emergency
EM
medicine.
video.
Right. Look in the
Jalea
descriptions.
came
The link is right
through.
there. Yeah, she did.
But I did have a question to follow up. I'm sorry. I know we were trying to finish up, but like if you don't have like an opto department in your school, like what would you recommend to people who are in that situation? Because I know you mentioned a lot of, go ahead, sorry.
That's a very good question, because there are some people, there were plenty of applicants that I met on the cycle that they did not have a home program. So they had to reach out to neighboring programs in order to get advice about like how to apply and stuff like that. The program coordinators in general, they are amazing people. We loved all of our program coordinators. They're very willing in order to take you on as like an adopted student if you don't have a home program itself. I'm not going to lie, it may be a bit more challenging for you to be able to shadow and to get those letters of recommendations and stuff, but you may just have to be a little bit more proactive. It can be done, and I mean, it's been done many of times.
Right. And even with kind of like thinking about like your 4th year, depending again, like with like the coronavirus and COVID-19 and how things are going. But depending on like your flexibility of your 4th year schedule, there's time, if you're able to do an away, that would be like an excellent opportunity to like kind of like get invested in like in a different program, speak with residents. Cause even if you don't have a home program, you can probably like reach out to residents, and they can also be an excellent resource for you in terms of like timeline, in terms of things that you need to get done, getting you on like research projects and stuff like that too. So that may be like another outlet that you can use.
And kind of like, I just thought of something too. For your medical school, look at the match list for the past 5 years of where people match that for ophthalmology. I highly suggest that you are applying to all those programs where they match that, because they're more willing to interview you because they already have residency and stuff. But, you know, they're also wonderful resources to look out to for additional advice in the case of your school does not have a ophthalmology program.
Okay, very last question. I promise.
It's I got time. I'm not going to.
Right.
Ain't nowhere to go.
We should all be staying home and social distancing, so we're not doing anything. And wearing our mask outside in public. Okay. At least that's how it is in Cali.
Illinois too.
What was one highlight throughout this whole journey that's not match? Like not matching, obviously that's like one of the highlights of our lives and definitely medical school. But what is one high point throughout your journey, excluding match?
I would say the best point is like knowing that this is what I was put on this earth to do, and finally having that aha moment, like, yo, like I love what I do. I want to share my love with other people to get them into the field and show them why this stuff is so incredible and cool. I think that's been just like the most gratifying and fulfilling thing. And knowing that so many people have mentored me over the years, and now I get the opportunity to do the same for them, and just to have that keep going down the line, like generation, stuff like that. I think that's the most fulfilling thing.
Yeah, that's good. I guess for me, not match related, I will say like being able to apply like what I learned in med school, like outside of the context of med school, right? So I guess I'll use the example of like global health. So as I mentioned, like my first year, like went on the trip, my going back to Zambia, like my 4th year, as a 4th year med student, granted, like I'm technically still not a physician, I haven't graduated. My graduation is like the 17th of May. But like going back in February, still being able to like recognize like different pathology, like different things, being able to like help patients and help people. I think that was pretty like an amazing point for me. And then also like in going to like Zambia, like I knew I wanted to do something that was like opto focused too. Like if I could finesse it, you know what I mean? And actually able was to. So like I was in like the rural area and I was also in like the city area. So I saw like both private and community, and I was able to like also like be like hands-on in a sense, not really hands-on because like as a student you can't do as much, especially like in a global health setting, but still being able to like see different pathology, like interact with patients, see things through the slit lamp. Like I think it was like a very exciting time to be able to translate my life as a student into like what it can be like as a professional, like moving forward. So that's probably one highlight I would say outside of the match.
Excellent. So before we wrap up, I always want to ask if you guys have anything you want to plug, any initiatives, any social media, stuff like that.
Yes, indeed. So kind of like the programs that we mentioned, just if you have a few highlights, the MOM program, Minority Ophthalmology Mentorship Program. I'm not exactly sure of what year in med school is like the cutoff, but if you are early on med school, if you're considering it, yes, immerse yourself, do it. These are free programs with free money to help get you into this field. Also, RAB Venable Excellence in Ophthalmology Program through the National Medical Association. Look it up. If there's still time to apply, definitely go for it. The coordinators of the program, they are like our mothers.
Honestly.
They are looking out for us. They are definitely looking out for us. And then I guess other social media plugs, you guys can follow me on Instagram. I am at Dr. MD at Dr. DMD. If you have any questions whatsoever, reach out to me. I love doing this. I want to see people into our field. So please do reach out.
Yeah, I honestly would plug the same programs, the MOM program, the NMA, the RAB Venable, in terms of that. In terms of like social media, like I'm on there, but I don't post as much, but you can still come find me. I'm like Picky, PICKY _Icky, ICKY, which is like a play on my last name. But yeah, and as kind of to like echo what Erin said, like I feel like everybody has like a little testimony within their own story. So if you need encouragement or if you want advice, like we are more than willing or more than happy to speak about like our own journeys or like, you know, anything in like that regard. Because again, as we mentioned, like ophthalmology, there's not as much diversity in it. And of course, that's something that we're trying to change like within the field. And so we know one day you may be as passionate as we are about it. And even if you're not, it's okay, you know, go into what you love to do at the end of the day. So.
And I
Great.
feel like I got so many gems, like so many philosophical moments from this talk. I'm gonna like type up, don't underestimate your greatness, and post it on my dream board. Like, y'all are literally the epitome of Black excellence.
Hey.
And
Right.
I'm
Right.
sure us three, we're so honored that
Mhm.
you took the time to sit down and talk to us and talk to our viewers about your journeys and how we can be better and set ourselves up for success too. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I know, especially given that this was like a last minute, you guys volunteered. Thank you, thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity. I mean, give us a chance to like speak on our own stories too, and like do an initiative that we love. We love to see, Black folk, minorities like thriving and succeeding and stuff like that. So thank you guys for the opportunity to do that.
And I'm gonna be looking for you, not like in a creepy way, but I'm gonna be looking for y'all journeys throughout. What? I'm gonna be looking, and I can't wait to see the growth that y'all do and the wonderful ophthalmologists or subspecialty ophthalmology that you guys will become. I'm so excited. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe out there.
Thank
Y'all
you
too. Y'all
guys.
too.
Stay
Safe.
safe. Wear your N95 if you have it, your surgical mask if you have it,
Goggles.
goggles.
Yep, that's
Goggles.
eye protection.
Yeah.
Get eye insurance.
Check.
In a couple of years, if you have cataracts or glaucoma, or you need an oculoplastic surgeon,
Right. Right.
you know,
Right.
if you're trying to do global health and ophthalmology, you already know. Go to Dr. Belinda. So we're setting you up for
Oh,
success.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, y'all have but on a serious note, I mean, the people that are watching, especially for those that are younger in your careers, M1, M2s, like these are people that you can reach out to. This is like a mentorship opportunity that's landing in your lap. So even if you're afraid, shy, unsure, these are people who are willingly putting out their information. So please take advantage, but don't overdo it. Do just enough.
No.
Just enough, not too much. But yeah, reach out and make those connections and to get to where you need to be. So on that note,
Toodles.
I hope I'll
Deuces.
see y'all.
Bye, y'all.